Hi, I'm Darren Starwin. In this brief video, I'm going to talk about a new way that people can bust free of old constraints that have been holding them back, sometimes for a very long time, and to move into living in a zone of fulfillment and joy. Now, this is a method that can work and do that much more quickly than you may believe is possible. Now, when you live in the zone of fulfillment, you feel inspired. You're connected with your purpose, and you start attracting resources to you much more easily and connections with people that you really want to know. When you live in this zone of fulfillment, the things you need come to you more easily. Sense of lack and not having enough starts vaporizing because it's not our true nature. A sense of having a feeling of isolation or feeling alienated just starts being replaced by this rich sense of connectedness. Knowing your true purpose, I truly believe, is one of the most valuable experiences of life, and it leads to all those things I just mentioned. But here's the crazy thing. This society that we live in does not encourage us to do this. Our society seems to be full of what I call weapons of mass distraction to distract us from knowing our true self, to get us putting our energy into things that are not necessarily going to give us those kind of results. Now, your zone of fulfillment is not something that you make up with your mind or that someone else tells you. It's innate to you. You might say it's a quality of your soul. It's your soul purpose. And there's nothing more fulfilling than tapping into that. Now, this 3-step program I'm going to tell you about is something that I developed after almost 40 years of working with human potential, spiritual psychology, vibrational energy medicine, acupuncture, and many forms of spiritual energy and healing. The purpose of this program is to take you from where you are now to living much more of the time in that zone. And the beautiful thing about it is that this can work for you regardless of whether you're somebody who already has accomplished a lot and is already at a high level of achievement and you want to go to your next level, or whether you're somebody that feels pretty constrained by old traumas and fears and blockages, maybe even feeling immobilized by these things. Either way, this can really take you to that zone. It doesn't really matter where you're starting from. Now, the 3 steps in this program are called quantum releasing, rewiring, and realizing. Now, before I go into those 3 steps, I want to say something up front about a very essential truth. This is important to say before going into any of the more specifics. And that truth is that you already are everything that you could possibly hope to be. You already are a shining light being of unlimited potentialities. But wait a minute, you may say, that sounds all well and good, but I don't feel that way. Yes, I know. That's the great paradox of our human existence, that we struggle so hard and make such incredible efforts to try to be what we already are. Now, so many great teachers and spiritual masters have come onto this planet and tried to deal with this paradox of human suffering that comes from not knowing our true nature. In recent years, I've seen big changes that so many people are going through. More and more people are really interested in elevating their consciousness and connecting with their higher self. And people from all different walks of life are experiencing, knowing things and experiencing things and seeing things that they just don't just come from their mind and that they don't really, or they weren't really taught these things. This is happening very rapidly. So we can truly say that there's an expansion of consciousness going on our planet. Now, an expansion of consciousness sounds like a very good thing, right? But it also has its difficulties, because as your consciousness expands, you become aware of a lot of things that were mercifully blocked off before, like feeling the pain of lots of people all over the world, feeling energies that you were not even aware of before, some of which are very pleasant and some which are not so pleasant. We can also feel things even coming from our ancestors, people we never even met or never even knew. And all these things are bombarding us these days in a way that's faster and faster. Now, when this happens, what I often call this is discombobulation. Discombobulation is the experience of too much input, too much overloading experiences that we're not actually able to process. They're not only coming from the outside, but as our consciousness is expanding, More and more deeply buried psychic material from our own subconscious mind, from our own past, is bubbling up to the surface to be cleared. So it truly can be, as many of my clients and patients say, overwhelming to have all this going on. In response to this, I've developed the 3 Steps to Freedom and Fulfillment program to help people to remove these old blockages and to move forward with the fulfilling, expressive life that they really want to live. I'll tell you now briefly about these 3 steps. The first step in the program is called quantum releasing. This step is all about lightening your load of old beliefs and psychic baggage and burdens that have been holding you down for a long time. The reason it's called quantum is because that refers to the fact that these shifts can happen very, very quickly. A quantum leap is what happens when a subatomic particle instantaneously jumps to a higher frequency and energy level. And it can seem that way too with this type of work. Through a combination of voice dialogue and spiritual energy work, you and I will work together to unwind many of these old, ancient burdens that you've been carrying around for a long time so that you can create space in yourself to move into living in your zone of fulfillment. This process of releasing and quantum field healing takes place in a high-frequency, coherent field of light that makes it much easier for you to recognize and connect with your true self. Most people who go through quantum releasing notice exquisite feelings of being energized, inspired, and lightened up. Sometimes people experience emotional releases that come up so that their body can unwind what's been holding them down. When that happens, these things generally come and go fairly quickly. So how does quantum releasing work? Well, our minds are a lot like computers. They can be programmed to create positive or negative outcomes. Quantum releasing is a process of releasing old buggy software from your body and your mind. This prepares you for rewiring yourself back to the light of your true self, which is the source of all your good. Step 2 of the 3 Steps to Freedom and Fulfillment program is called rewiring. And this is a beautiful process of reconnecting your body and your mind to your true self. And this is something that happens at whatever pace you're ready for. It's highly individual. During a rewiring session, you'll either be sitting in a recliner chair or laying down on a table, and I'll work in your energy field guided by your higher self and spiritual guidance. A rewiring session takes typically between 30 to 60 minutes. After going through quantum clearing and rewiring, many of the people that have worked with me have reported some remarkable breakthrough results. So since what I just said may have sounded a bit abstract, let me give you some practical examples of this. For example, there's one woman named Helen who is in her 50s from Hawaii when I was out there doing some work. And she came to me because she was going with the man who she wanted to be married with. In fact, they both wanted to be married to each other, but they couldn't seem to quite do it because every time they got close to that point of making the decision to go forward with their wedding, they'd end up having these terrible fights, and each one would blame the other person, and they'd feel deeply hurt, and they'd withdraw, and then they'd be drawn back together again, and they'd get closer, and then they'd get to that point, and then this big fight would come up, and it was like deeply painful and devastating. And they had gone through this for quite a long time. So Helen came to me looking for some kind of other solutions, and she'd already tried counseling and other types of typical things like that. So she went through 2 to 3 of these quantum clearing sessions, and I came back to California after coming back from Hawaii, and about 2 months later I got this announcement of her wedding. Both of them were standing with big smiles in this photo, and she said, "Thank you." That's one example. Now another one was a younger man named Carlos who I work with, who's here in the Bay Area. And Carlos also had a relationship challenge. He was living with his girlfriend. He was really in love with her, wanted to be with her, but he had a drinking problem. And he was acting in ways that was really hurtful to her. And eventually she basically kicked him out, said, "I just can't handle this anymore. Get out of here." And he was willing to leave and look at himself, and he was pretty bewildered. He was a software programmer and didn't really know what to do. So he was referred to me, and I did a series of sessions with Carlos. And after that session, he went off on a trip by himself, and he did some soul searching. And when he came back from that, he got back together with his girlfriend. She accepted him. He treated her much better. He stopped drinking. He got a new job, as a matter of fact, in a new Silicon Valley place, and things were very, very different for him, because he had released some of this old baggage and was able to reprogram his computer in that way. The third example I want to give you is a nurse named Melanie that I work with. And she had come here from another country. And she was very healthy in most ways, except she was having this stabbing pain in her belly. And it was so bad and so severe that she was seeing doctors, and they put her on these really heavy-duty drugs, which were not too good to be on for long periods of time, but she wasn't able to work. So by doing this quantum clearing and rewiring, she was able to realize that what was going on in her stomach was not just a physical thing. There was a deep emotional root to it, and within just a couple of sessions, she was able to get in touch with it, transform the deprogramming, and feel way more positive. And now she's ready to wean herself off those drugs and get back on with her life. So these are just a few examples of what can happen with this system. Like I said, things can happen more quickly than you may believe is possible. So how do we get so disconnected from our true self? Well, the main reason is we've become addicted to these lower vibrational experiences of pain and trauma and stress. Therefore, even though we are so beautifully connected in truth, we don't really feel it or see it. That's why rewiring is so incredibly valuable. Now, the third step in this three-step process is called realizing. Now, I really believe that it's wonderful to relieve your pain and relieve your suffering, but that's just the first step. What's really where the fulfillment and the solution comes in is when you connect with your purpose and you truly live it. Now, so many people would like to do that, but they first have to go through the releasing and rewiring process before it really becomes tangible for them. You have a unique, brilliant purpose that you're here to fulfill. Your unique purpose is different than what anyone else has. It's unique to you. And as you tap into that, as you live it, as you express it, there's such great joy in doing that. So if you've had the feeling that there hasn't quite been enough joy in your life, there hasn't been enough fulfillment in your life, what that means to me is that you have a deep longing to discover and connect with this unique, brilliant purpose. Because as you live it, as I said earlier, that brings all the good things of life to you because you're fulfilling your purpose. Now, once you've gone through quantum releasing and rewiring, it's much, much easier to do that. I'm going to give you one final story before we close here today. This is another man I met in Hawaii, another client I had there, who was quite a successful business person. He'd been working in the financial services all his life. And now he was 70 years old, and he had this dream to write a series of books that would change the world. He wanted to bring spiritual principles into novels that would really draw people in, like other people have done. And when I met him at a dinner party, he told me all about it. And I said, well, how are you going with this? And he said, well, I haven't really started yet. And so as we talked, he said, yeah, I think maybe I'll do it next year. And there was just things going on where even though this was so exciting to him, he just either didn't have the energy or there was something missing in him actually moving forward and doing this creative project. So as I told him about this quantum work, he became interested. And after just one session that we did, he wrote to me and he said, you know, I've just gotten this flood of ideas. I feel like I'm on fire. The juice is flowing and I'm starting to write. After the second session we did, which we did by phone because I was already back in California, he said, you know, whatever other sessions I prepaid for, give them to someone else. I don't really need them because I have everything I need. So you may be asking, how can I know if this three-step program is right for me? Well, going through that decision process can be your first step. Here's a little bit of guidance to help you do that. You could do this right now if you'd like. It only takes a minute or two. Just sit up straight, put your feet flat on the floor, get into a meditative, relaxed state as best as you can. You don't have to do that perfectly. Take a few deep breaths and just fully arrive in this moment. And then simply ask your own higher self, is it really right for me to go through these 3 steps that I just heard Darren talking about? And then just relax. So if you start feeling a sense of excitement, a sense of richness, a sense of inspiration, then it's very likely that's your high self speaking to you, and this would be very beneficial for you. If on the other hand you feel just sort of flat, or you just feel this no coming up, then this is not really the right time to do this kind of work. Perhaps you could check back another time. Either way, you just took a step toward moving forward on your path of fulfilling your life by listening to yourself. I'm so glad you did that. Thank you so much for listening.